Attention pro athletes. Want to secure your financial legacy and thrive off the field? Oakbridge Wealth Management, led by wealth manager Chris Anicetti, is your dedicated financial planning ally. But don't take it from me. Take it from the Dallas Cowboys' Tyler Biadasz. He says Chris set goals financially and has been incredibly impactful in my journey in the NFL. Experience our customized, comprehensive approach, trusted by top NFL players. Don't leave your financial success to chance. Connect with Chris on Instagram at OakbridgeWM_Anicetti. That's OakbridgeWM_ANICETE, and let Oakbridge Wealth Management guide you across the goal line.
Bernstein again, big opening, pass 5, pass 10, Vermont's a man, and he goes all the way to the 15-yard line. 17 yards of the terror.
Welcome back to Believe in Badgers on the Believe Network, presented by BetOnline.ag and Oakbridge Wealth Management. I'm Matt Perkins, joined as always by Badger legend, the Hebrew Hammer himself, Matt Bernstein. Bernie, how are we doing today?
Yeah, buddy, it's Friday. We got, listen, every day's a holiday, but this is a special dude we got on. Probably, well, one of the best looking guys I think we've had on in a while. Shed about 100 pounds. One of the most interesting men. Hey, dude, Jake, you must have been in a ton of magazines. Are you the most interesting man in the world? Close?
Well, I drink enough Mexican beer to be the most interesting man in the world.
I'd love to hear that. You must have gotten that from your early days in Wisconsin.
You know where all the bodies are buried, Matt Bernstein.
We will not dig them up, I promise.
Well, maybe only one or two, but yes, we've got
maybe one or two.
We've got Jake Wood here today. If you are a Badger fan, you probably know who Jake Wood is already. But founder of Team Rubicon, founder of Groundswell, former Badger, Marine, and one of the most inspiring people that I think you're going to, encounter here on this planet. So like we said, it is an honor to have Jake here with us. Before we hop into it, just a quick note, we are presented by betonline.ag. Head on over to the website, use your mobile device to sign up today, receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts. Bernie, I'm going to pass the ball back to you here and get started with Jake, because you go back, well, quite a long way with him.
Dude, let me tell you where my Jake Wood first experience was. This dude figured out how to write an email to all the freshmen incoming in our class and sent it out to like my horse53@AOL.com email. And my dad was like, "Man, this is so nice of Jake Wood to do. Like, you don't know who this guy is." I was like, "No, I have no idea who any of these people are." Jake, do you remember doing that?
It's funny. I do. I remember asking, I must have been Coach Huber or one of the coaches. I'm like, "Hey, can I get all the guys' email address? We can like get a email chain started, get to know one another." And I think it was Huber, because he looked at me like I had a, what growing on my forehead. Like, you want to do what? And, that was kind of my welcome to Jim Huber moment. But it was cool, man. I had a bunch of conversations with guys before we stepped on campus resulting from that. And it was, we had an interesting group of dudes. So you can imagine what like some of those preliminary phone calls were like with the likes of with that crew. But yeah, man, that's a blast from the past. That was 25 years ago.
And I don't even know if there was a reply all button at that point.
I mean, some of the guys didn't even have emails. Like legit coaches would be like, "Yeah, we don't have an email for this kid. Don't think he has one." I mean, that's what it was like.
Imagine that. And it's still bonkers to think about. But Jake, let's go back to like the early Jake Wood, when you might have been a little bit shorter, and you were definitely bigger than you are now. Where does football originate for Jake Wood?
Yeah, I mean, my dad got me into football. My dad was a good high school football player. I think he was, all state in the state of Ohio, and played like one of those like crazy semi-pro like football leagues when he was a young adult, like drinking beer on the bus on the way to the game, and drinking beer probably at halftime, and I don't know, making $45 a game or whatever. and he just loved it, him and his brother. And so like I grew up, like he loved, he taught me about the game and all that stuff, but I didn't start playing until 7th grade. It was when I first really like put on pads and started playing football. It just really wasn't a thing where I lived to do it before that. And I was a big kid in junior high. Immediately got stuck on the line. Actually, no, I played fullback. My 7th grade year, I played fullback. I wore number 40. Now it's coming back to me. I think I allowed myself to block this out. Yeah, I wore number 40, and then like next year they're like, "You're a guard, kid. You're a guard, son." So, but this might bring it back for you, Bernie. I wore 40 because I was a Nebraska Cornhuskers fan, and Corey Schlesinger. Do you remember that guy?
Oh, yeah.
At Nebraska? Like that guy was God. So I wanted to be Corey Schlesinger, and I wore number 40.
Oh man, that's too good. So you got moved to guard, and then as you progressed through high school, people must have been taking a look. They're like, man, Jake Wood, what are you like 6'6", 300 pounds? Like they must have been like, man, this guy could play at the next level.
I mean, I was smaller than that. Like I was 6'5", 6'6", but I was probably playing my junior year at 250.
Okay.
And, that's when you're getting recruited is off of your junior tapes, unless you're really good and you're getting, offers as a sophomore. So like my junior tapes, I was sending around, I was 6'5", 250. I think like the scouting report on me was probably like good feet, smart player. Right. And then the decision that everybody had to make was, can the guy get big enough? Right. And then for me, can he stay healthy? Which we all kind of, we know that wasn't the case, but, and I don't, Matt, I don't know if you remember, but like, think back to our class and how our freshman year played out. They recruited me, Matt Lawrence, J Po, all these like smaller offensive linemen because Barry had thought, hey, we're going to switch to the spread, and remember we went to that spread offense our freshman year and we just got dominated by the Big Ten. Like we went 5-7 our freshman year. Barry's like, enough of that shit. We're going, we're putting Bernie back in the backfield. We're going 2 tight end sets and we're getting back to the basics. And then it was like, okay, well, 290-pound Jake, not the grinder that they needed. And that was kind of that. Probably should have gone to play at Purdue.
Well, I'm happy you didn't go play at Purdue.
No, I know, because I don't hate myself.
We won't share that with Purdue or anyone who went there. Oh man, there's a guy who walks around my town with all Purdue gear on all the time. I live in New York. He's the only one I've ever seen in New York with Purdue gear on, and I kind of chuckle every time I see him. I don't know. It just brought that right back.
Yeah.
So when you're like a junior, senior, who else is on the docket? Like, where are you thinking, and how does Wisconsin kind of take the lead?
Oh, you mean in the recruiting?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
let me get a better question. How on earth did you meet Coach Huber and then come play for Coach Huber?
That's actually it's interesting because that's exactly the story. I was getting recruited like most of the Big 10, Big 12 schools. Like I said, I grew up a Nebraska fan. So like you do that camp circuit your sophomore, junior year, right? And I remember I went to the Illini camp, the Iowa State, Nebraska, and I think I went to a couple of others that were like 1-day camps. And, I remember like my first scholarship offer, I went to the Iowa State, Cyclone football camp. Dan McCarney was the head coach. And it's interesting when they have their eyes on you as a recruit, they start, at least for the offensive and defensive linemen, they start pulling guys out of the drills and they just pull them aside and it's just like, boom, go one-on-one. They're like, hey, this is our top defensive tackle recruit. This is our top O-line. And you're just smashing all day. And it's fun. Like when you're young and you can take that beating every day, like now it just gives me anxiety thinking about it. But like back then, like that's what you live for. And I remember there was this kid who's like had been all state his sophomore year, big name in Iowa, playing defensive end or tackle. And I just smoked the kid. And then I smoked him again. And that afternoon, the head coach pulled me into his office like, hey, Jake, we want you to be a Cyclone. And that was my first scholarship offer. And that was a fun moment, And then like the summer progressed, I got other offers and all that stuff. And then you know how it is. Like every coaches recruit based off of FOMO, right? So all those websites, like those blogs, like rivals.com start like, hey, this Jake Wood kid has offers from Iowa, Iowa State, Nebraska, whatever. And then you start getting calls from the coaches based on FOMO. You're like, I don't want to be the idiot that missed out. So I got a call from Wisconsin. They're like, hey, we want you to come up for this 1-day visit. It wasn't a camp. We want you to see the campus. I show up, it's a 2-hour drive, 2.5-hour drive from where I was. Go with my dad. We walk around campus. They take you into the weight room. Coach Detmer was there. He gives you like the shoulder squeezes. He like starts like just putting his hands all over your body, trying to assess the muscle mass. It's like a cattle exhibit. And I remember on the drive home, I got a call from Coach Huber. He's like, we like you. He's like, you'll hear from us, really soon. And the next day there was a FedEx on our doorstep with a paper scholarship offer. And I fell in love with the campus on that trip. And so my decision ultimately came down to 2 schools. I had a full ride to Stanford and Wisconsin. Okay. And so I took my first official visit to Stanford. And that was a funny experience. Like, I got good grades, got a good test score. I still, when I applied to Stanford, it was paper application because it was back in the day. And it was stamped football at the top. So like, make no mistake, I don't think I got in fully on merit, but I got into Stanford. And I took my official visit. Tyrone Willingham was the coach. And it was funny because like I'm sitting in this dude's office, campus is beautiful, and Tyrone Willingham's sitting across from me, my dad's in there. And he starts talking in the third person. He's like, Tyrone Willingham is he starts talking about how he is as a coach, but in the third person. I'm like, this is fucking weird. And then, I'm spending time with my offensive line coach, and he's telling me his philosophy. He's like, yeah, I don't really yell at my players. I'm more of like a supportive guy. And my high school coach was like he just, yell, scream, fire and brimstone guy. So the vibes I was getting from these dudes was like kumbaya. And I'm like, man, this isn't football. I went into their weight room, no free weights. They didn't do squats, no power cleans. I'm like, you guys play football or like water polo? And so, and then I go to Wisconsin. It's just the exact opposite. Huber sits me down. He's like, I'm not much for small talk, so I want you to show up. Like, if you come here, cool. If not, get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, I want to play for this dude. That's literally why I went to Wisconsin, because I wanted to get yelled at by Coach Huber. And then I hated myself for 4 years.
Dude, that guy really could get in your brain and like play with you.
Oh, I was told the most irreverent things you've ever heard, like things I could not repeat. I imagine there's some irreverent things that get said on this podcast. You would get banned.
No, there'd be like one long bleep. I just remember sitting there going, man, Jake, are you okay? Like that was, but he did it to everyone. Like nobody was safe.
He did. He was, yeah, nobody was safe.
No one was
nobody
safe.
was safe.
Yeah. Okay, wait, so
I went to Joe Thomas's Hall of Fame induction, back in the summer, and the night before there was a bunch of us sitting around, a bunch of O-line guys, and we were all like, "Do you think Huber's going to show up?" And half of us were like, "The guy, like, I still check underneath my bed at night before I go to sleep to make sure he's not hiding under there. Like, I hope he doesn't show up." And the other half was like, "No, I've been talking to my therapist. I need to get something out. Like, I hope I can see him." And I walk up to the guy. He's sitting there. He hasn't gotten younger. That might surprise you. And I sit down. I'm like, "Coach, so good to see you." I don't think he knew who I was. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not even sure he remembered who I was. And so I'm like, "Nice chat, Coach." Walked away.
Dude, Jake, JP showed up to a tailgate this year that I was with Kleber, and I nearly like my pants. Whip that out, Matt Perkins. I was like, no, I like the dude, but I don't want to relive those days of getting yelled at for just even putting eye black on my, like, you couldn't do anything. You tape your wrists. Some coach was yelling at you that your wrist was, it actually made us, I think, tougher, but it was also really annoying. And I don't have a therapist, but I probably do need one.
I know. I remember once during a game, JP, the defense had come off the field, and JP was just laying into them. And then the crowd kind of went quiet for a minute, and he didn't stop. So he's just going, going, going. And this woman who's like 25 rows up behind the bench, probably 75 years old, says, "You need to watch your mouth," and like chastises him, and he stops and he's like starts shaking, and he's like, "You mind your business." I'm like, oh my God.
They couldn't separate like football from their life or like coaching kids. No. It was pretty bananas. No. Oh man, you just brought like Cleaver's like, I'm scared that he's coming, but he's coming because we were with Jess. It's amazing that he has like the nicest kids ever, and he is.
Oh, I know.
Like outrageously bananas. Yeah. By the way, I saw Joey Huber, his son, in like a bar a couple years ago, and I was like, "Hey, Joey, man, it's great to see you. Please tell me your dad's not here, right?" And he's like, no, don't worry. I know. I'm like, okay, I was going to go chug like 7 beers if he was here today. All right, let's get back to you, man. Jake, and your trauma as a Badger football player. No, but so wait. So when you showed up, I don't think you were there on my visit. Were you? On your official visit?
It was during a massive snowstorm.
No, you were with Rob Brooks, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was fun, man. It was like, I'm from the Midwest, so, a little snow doesn't scare me. I was also like Lyle Maava and I think Donovan were on that trip as well. So they show up from Hawaii. There's like 18 inches of snow that dropped the night before, right? So, I'm getting shown around campus by Mike Lorenz. He's only a year older than us, so he can't get us into any, like we're trying to get into the bars. It's not working. We go to a couple of house parties and, it was cool. There was a snowball fight in the street, and I'm like, first of all, I'm like, I'm from the Midwest. I'm like, these are my people. I just gotten back from Palo Alto, California the week before, which, by the way, is the most gorgeous campus in the world. You show up, there's like 10 golf carts lined up for the recruits, each one driven by a lovely young lady, and who's going to take you on a tour of campus by the palm trees and that was nice, but a snowball fight in, December, on University Avenue, I was like, this is where I want to be.
Dude, that is so wacky. I love that. It couldn't have been 2 more wildly different schools.
Crazy.
One school just doesn't even do powerlifting, and the other school, you get MF'd if you show up 1 minute late to a meeting.
Yeah.
All right, so Jake Wood shows up on campus. Day 1, we're at the Regent. You meet all these dudes you had conversations with. Walk us through like that first. Because I remember I showed up later, but that was a wild crowd of people.
Oh yeah, listen, I played high school sports in Iowa, man. Like, there's like 10 to 12 D1 prospects that come out of that state every year. So, throughout the course of a season, I might play against 3 or 4 of them. And like, they might be then you show up and you're in a room. I had never not been the biggest guy in a room by like a wide margin. And suddenly you're crammed into that tiny Regent apartment, and, you're next to like Jeff Lang. And you remember that dude, Nick, from Michigan Toffrey, that quit after like 5 days? Nick, yeah.
Toffrey, Nick something.
Yeah. He quit.
It's not
to go
easy
back
to
to
show up. Yeah. Or she came.
Oh, that's right.
She
yeah,
for
the summer.
I think he quit the first week of football camp.
Yeah.
Because that is
Hubert
a wild.
Had nice things to say about that.
But because wait, it was you, Nick, Jeff.
It's hard not to be intimidating. Like I'd always been the biggest guy in the room, and suddenly, like, I'm probably the smallest among that group of like incoming offensive and defensive linemen, and I'm like, all right, strap it up, let's go, And then it's not just them. It's like like you show up and I'm like, this kid plays fullback. Like, are you kidding me? Yeah, it was wild. It was wild.
we can skip through the summer training was a nightmare also because I didn't know, nobody knows anyone. You're trying to have a good time. You're there for 2 months before school starts. You're paying your own way, which is nuts to me now because no athlete
Yeah.
pays a cent for anything. Let's talk. You mentioned it. Let's jump into seminary because I have to equivalent, and maybe we're going to talk about it later, but like that felt like joining the military. Like you literally went somewhere else and you only did one thing, and I did nothing else. What did Jeff Mack used to scream, like, eat, sleep, shit, football? Like, that's really all we did. And they didn't tell you what to bring. And as a freshman, I had everything with me. Everything I owned was at the seminary, two huge duffel bags. What was it like showing up there, and what was the seminary like for you?
I mean, dude, it's like you said, like you don't know what to expect, and any time there's like an unknown, it creates some level of fear and anxiety, right? So you're like, okay, so we're going to go off campus to this converted monastery for the next 3 weeks. We're going to have sleep in a room. There's no air conditioning. You're gonna practice 3 times a day, watch film for 6 hours, get screamed at the entire time. You can do nothing wrong. Your entire life is gripped with this fear that your alarm clock is not going to go off and you're going to like miss something. And so, man, it was tough. It was tough. But I remember so back then the freshmen used to report early, right? So we got there 3 days, I think, before varsity. And I felt like I was doing pretty good. Like, I was, again, a good student. I felt like I picked up the playbook fast, and I felt like I was competing pretty well. And then the varsity showed up, and that's an intimidating moment. Like, I remember Wendell Bryant returning All-American, and so that's when they start splitting off the scout team. And of course I get sent over with the scout team, and we come in to have practice at the McLean Center, that first varsity practice. So this is first varsity practice. And they peel off the scout team. They say, go, hey, all you scout offensive linemen, go over there with Coach Palermo. And we already talked about him, right? So he starts teaching us how to run blocking drills against his defensive line. And, we go through a half dozen drills. And then I come up, again, having already done a half dozen of these, and they moved me into guard. I came in to play tackle. So I'm playing guard. But that meant that on this particular play, I was lined up against Wendell Bryant, 295-pound All-American. And, intimidated, obviously intimidated. And so snap the ball, I come off the line, and Wendell just embarrasses me, just does some kung fu move. I fall flat on my face, whatever it is. And Coach Palermo is just veins popping out. And he's like, what was that, Wood? Are you titty bumping him? and just screams, line up and run it again. And so at this point, you're lining up, and now they know what play you're running. So you might have had a 10% chance of not looking like an idiot the first time. You have a 0% chance the second time, right? And so I come off the line, and Wendell just takes my arm and literally rips it out of the socket. Literally takes my shoulder and rips it out of the socket. And it's hanging there, and it's so painful. And I turn around, and now after Coach Palermo has just yelled at me now I have to turn around and tell him that I'm injured. So now he's looking at me like, you are the most worthless athlete we've ever recruited in the history of this program. And he won't even talk to me, and just tells me to get out of his face. And I go over to a trainer. Trainer's like no sympathy whatsoever. They just reach up, they pop my shoulder back in. They're like, you're done for the day. I'm like, okay, I think so. And they fast forward, I get an MRI that evening. They confirm I tore my labrum, and this is what they say. They're like, tore your labrum, you need surgery. I'm like, oh, it sucks. Season's over. I was going to redshirt anyway, but it sucks. And they go, but what we're going to do, we're going to give you about 4 days off, and you're going to go back and keep practicing. I'm like, 4 days doesn't seem like enough to heal it, but okay. And then they look at my confusion. They're like, it's going to dislocate again. We'll pop it back in. They're like, this is probably going to happen about a half dozen more times. And then come mid-October, we'll have surgery. You'll have exactly 6 months until spring ball. starts, but at least now you'll be able to get 6 to 8 weeks of practice in. 6 to 8 weeks of practice and 6 to 8 more shoulder dislocations, it sounds like. And so sure enough, that's what happened. Like I spent the next 6 weeks, every other week I would dislocate my shoulder. They would pop it back in. I'd get 3 days off. I'd go back out there. I'd get 4 practices, dislocate my shoulder. And by the time October rolled around, like, I don't know, I had like 2 fucking threads of ligaments holding my arm bone in, and they sewed it back up. And 6 months later, I was in spring ball.
It brings back, I mean, I won't dive into this, but the training staff, I don't think does a lot of people favors, at least not when we were there. I don't know what it's like now.
I mean, I think they were nice guys, like Ian, Dennis, like they were nice guys. I got to know them well because I spent a lot of time with them. But they were in service of the program.
Totally.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They were in service, but that was their job. And, you know, I think I agree with you. I think today there's a more holistic lens on health than there was when we existed. I mean, Bernie, you know, concussions didn't exist when we played football. And I know that you probably gave 100 people concussions when you were playing, but you probably received 1 or 2. And unless you lost consciousness, like literally, unless you lost consciousness and they had to use smelling salts on you, like you did not have a concussion. That's just not how it worked. The science wasn't there.
Right.
So
no, I agree. Listen, I think they were nice human beings, but that didn't help fighting for me when I needed you to fight for me. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but neither here nor there. Listen, dude, that's a horrible experience, though. And then
it's miserable.
Terrible. What is JD? Because then you have to go tell JD, like, hey, I can't do anything. JD's not happy about it. And then you got to deal with Bot, and then you got to deal with everybody else. And you are just one human being.
Yeah. you just, you know, you get one chance to make a first impression, right? And even though this, you know, I'd been on campus for 5 weeks or whatever it was, like this was effectively my first impression is, hey, I was the kid that couldn't stay healthy. And listen, it was the truth. Like I couldn't stay healthy, but like you also don't want to be that guy because football is all about being reliable. And I remember, you know, my junior year, I don't know if you remember, in spring ball, our junior year, Coach Huber moved me into guard from left tackle, where I was backing up Joe Thomas, and during the spring ball had me compete for the starting guard position. And I ended up by near the end of spring, I'd won the starting offensive guard position. Practicing with the ones for, you know, the last 3 weeks of spring, I was going into the spring game, going to be the starting guard, and then I blew out my other shoulder. And I remember Coach Huber taking me into his office and like actually for the first time, like a little compassion in his voice. He's like, Wood, I can't give you any more chances. Like I can't invest in you anymore because I can't rely on you. If you can't stay healthy, I can't continue to give you these chances. And like at that point, I kind of knew the writing was on the wall. Like, you know, I was not getting healthier. Let's put it that way.
What a hard conversation to have as like a 20-year-old. Right, like pretty crazy.
Oh yeah. I remember my sophomore year, I called my dad and I said, hey, I'm thinking about transferring. Back then it was a lot harder to transfer, but I thought, one, I'm now in the wrong program because I'm not a power offensive tackle, right? 2, we had just recruited Joe Thomas. But I was like, you know, I don't think I'm going to be able to crack the starting lineup here at tackle. Like I should go play for a spread or West Coast offense. Like, you know, the Stanfords or the Iowa States, that's what they were running. And I'm like, maybe I should do that. And my dad's like, don't be a quitter. And at the same time, like, I freaking loved our team and Madison. So like, this was one of those like moments of weakness where I was like, you know, if I wanted to maximize my football career, I probably should have transferred. But at that point I was like, hey, there's more to life. And I love the guys I'm with. I love Madison. And, you know, that was it.
Yeah, we had a very, very good time.
Yeah, we did.
Absurdly good. So you mentioned Joe Thomas. You mentioned some other dudes. I'm sure when you showed up, Ben Johnson was that guy. You're like,
yeah,
what the heck is going on here?
Yeah.
That was my moment. I'm like, Ben Johnson's 6'8", like 300. He doesn't even look nice. Although he is kind of nice, he doesn't look it. Who else? Like when you're in that room with all those guys, yeah, Huber's being Huber, but like who else is in there? Like, who's like going at it? Like, who are you having such a good time with? Like, what's the room like in the O line, the big heavy room?
That it was, so after games, after practice, like, every single thing that happens in practice is recorded, right? And you watch every snap, every drill, and you become so fearful of Coach Huber that you have like this mental note. You remember every single snap from a practice. Did you win or lose across all 75 snaps that you took, or however many drills you did. And so when the one is coming up, because you always get made to look like a fool at least once. And so everybody's just kind of sitting there like, waiting. And I'm like, oh God, in 3 plays, I remember when I totally whiffed on that, that T block. And then, he's got that little rewinder and the play runs and you see yours and you're like, oh, it looks worse on film than it did, I thought. And what Huber would do is he would sit there, he'd watch it and he'd rewind it. And he'd watch it, and he'd rewind it, and he knew what he was doing because you're just like sitting there, and you're like, "Oh my God, can I disappear?" Like you're trying to. And then he would, when it was really bad, he wouldn't even yell. He would just set the remote down, and he would kind of breathe out. He would just sometimes in a really low, calm voice say something like, "That was the worst goddamn attempt I have ever seen." And you just knew there was only every once in a while would he bring any levity to the situation, and when he did, it crushed because every other thing that came out of his mouth was so horrific.
Attention athletes. Do you want a frictionless and tailored financial planning experience to secure your future? Well, look no further. Introducing Oakbridge Wealth Management, the premier financial planning firm for professional athletes. Led by wealth manager Chris Anicetti, our team provides a unique and comprehensive approach, ensuring your financial success both on and off the field. We understand the unique challenges you face as a professional athlete, from managing cash flow habits to planning major business purchases and navigating complex contracts. That's why we've developed a proven process, working closely with our strategic partners to provide seamless solutions for your unique financial journey. Our services evolve with your career, offering short, mid, and long-term goal setting, portfolio optimization, real estate investments, and more. As you transition to life beyond the field, we support you with career development and philanthropic ventures. But don't just take our word for it. Top NFL players like Chase Boulier, Tyler Biadasz, Alec Ingold, and more trust Oakbridge Wealth Management to guide them towards financial success. Troy Dye of the Minnesota Vikings says, "I really love the work that Chris and the rest of the Oakbridge group do. I especially like the honesty and transparency when it comes to setting up financial goals and plans that best fit my needs and situation. It's time to elevate your financial game plan. Connect with Chris on Instagram at OakbridgeWM_Anicetti. That's OakbridgeWM_ANICETE. And join the winning team."
So Jake, like coming from Iowa, you walk in. What is it like to go into Camp Randall for the first time to see it?
Yeah, man, it's wild. That first game day, like, and especially, even as a freshman, I'm redshirted. I'm injured, I'm wounded, but like, I'm suiting up for the game. You're not going to play because you both suck and you're redshirted. And but you run out of that tunnel and it's a high, it's like the Super Bowl, that first one. You walk through the stadium. The crowd is sitting there like clapping you on the hands and the helmet and the shoulder pads, and you get into that tunnel and you run down. Now the entrance is all different and stuff, but like, man, it's just like you're the center of the universe for a moment. It's crazy. The band is playing. They got the dance squad there. Like, it's just the energy it's hard to describe, man. It's hard to describe.
I'll just say I redshirted also, and it was the best thing that I've ever done. And I was one of the worst fullbacks to ever show up. I got MF'd like you did, Jake, all day by the coaches. They're like, you came here? Like, how did we recruit you? That was like the lowest low of an insult. Like, how did we recruit you? Why? What were we thinking?
Yeah.
But
Why did we waste a scholarship on you? Yeah.
all those are the worst. Those
Yeah.
some of that stuff still sits in my brain. Like, man,
It cuts.
and every time I
It
see Nick
cuts, man.
Bryson, I'm like, man, this guy abused me. Not on purpose. He just did it within practice. But
Oh, dude, yeah, Nick Bryson, like pulling around, or like stepping into an A gap or a B gap with Nick Bryson coming downhill. Like, oh my God. Oh, I got concussed so many times just stepping into that gap to block a blitz. Oh, man.
good times, good times. So, Jake, I want to pivot because I actually find your life from football on is just as amazing as it was during football.
Well, it was a low bar during football. So.
Well, you set the bar extremely high because I don't think anyone can really achieve what you've achieved in your life. When does the thought start happening to say, maybe I do want to join the Marines? And also not just that, like maybe I want to do the hardest thing in the Marines as a 6'5". Like there are not many snipers who are 6'5", 6'6". In general, there's nobody who's 300 pounds. So when does that thought start clicking, and then how does that build, and then how do you go from there?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when I was in high school, I thought about joining the military. Like before, like I knew I could play D1 football. Like it was an avenue that I really considered. I looked at West Point, Naval Academy, and actually went so far as to like begin those applications. I got my nomination from a senator in Iowa to West Point, and Chuck Grassley, 25 years later, he's 96 years old and still in the Senate. And they recruited me to play football hard because I could qualify to get in, and it's hard, for them to find quality football players. So I entertained that. 9/11 happened our freshman year, all those things. Like it was always in the back of my mind, and at a certain point, I think around that junior year when I shared that story about spring ball and blowing out my other shoulder, like I knew my career was over, right? I'd already determined that I was never going to make the NFL, but I kind of came to the conclusion I'm probably not even going to break the starting lineup my senior year. And it was like, all right, so I just made the decision that, I wanted to go serve. The wars were going on. And, I spoke to the Marine Corps early to see if I could get in as an officer. And, I wasn't dead set on going in as an officer, but the officer recruiter basically looked at 2 blown out shoulders and a foot surgery. And he's like, you're too much paperwork. I won't even think about it. I went to the Army and I requested a special forces contract. And same thing. They're like, you got 2 blown out shoulders. We can't give you a guaranteed school to airborne or slot to airborne because you need your shoulders to work for airborne school. So they were like, join the regular Army. And after 4 years, you can try for special forces. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I went back to the Marine Corps, enlisted guy. I'm like, hey, I want to join the infantry. And he looked at me. He's like, you're about to be a college graduate. Why would you want to enlist in the Marine Corps infantry? I'm like, bro, take it or leave it. Like, I'm making an easy sell right now. Like, and even that wasn't easy. I had to get a special waiver from the Pentagon because of my surgeries. I had to have Coach Herbert and Coach Bott and Coach Detman all write letters on my behalf. Those were the 3 strength coaches we had, and basically saying like, this guy's physically capable. His shoulders, are capable, which I think was probably a lie, of handling it. So, I went in and like I said, I chose the infantry. And eventually, after my first tour, which was in Iraq, I was recruited to try out for the sniper platoon, which was, it's a challenging selection process. And then from there, once you're in that platoon, it's interesting. It's very similar to football, right? So in a sniper platoon, it's a caste system. So only the best Marines get into the sniper platoon from across the entire Marine Corps. But then when you're not a sniper. You're only a sniper once you've gone to and graduated from sniper school. And so you get in the platoon, and there's 2 classes of Marines. There's hogs. People who have graduated sniper school are called hogs, hunters of gunmen. And then everybody else is a pig. And the worst thing in the world to be is a pig. Being a pig in a sniper platoon is like the worst form of hazing every day, all day. And they're just prepping you to maybe get a shot at sniper school to become a hog. And so for like 6 months, I'm a pig in this sniper platoon every day, miserable. And finally, I was, they picked kind of like their best pigs to go to sniper school, which I did. So then I go to sniper school. It's like 32 of us from across the Marine Corps. And, again, the best pigs who are the best Marines from across the battalion. So it was kind of like that moment showing up on campus, like, oh, these are good Marines, right? Only 14 of us graduated out of 32. And I was lucky, man. Like I almost failed the first week. Land navigation, map and compass. It's like an 8-hour event. You're got a pack with a sandbag in your pack. On top of the sandbag, they put what's called a Prick 19 radio. So you're probably carrying like 60, 65 pounds on your back, plus a bunch of other equipment. And you probably have to make like, I don't know, 12 or 14 miles of movement to find these waypoints across this mountainous terrain. And it's hard. It's hard physically. It's like really physically hard, but it's also very hard from a skill perspective. And I didn't make it. I didn't make all six or eight waypoints my first one. And I got blisters on my feet that were so bad. My sniper partner had to take a knife, cut open the blisters that night. The next day you had one more chance to pass land nav. I had him duct tape my feet. I literally like ankle tape. I had him duct tape my feet underneath my boots so that I could like literally walk like I was on stilts with these blisters. And I made like the 12 miles of waypoints with duct taped feet. And I didn't even take the duct tape off for another like 24 hours because it was like too painful, too sensitive. I wanted it to like wear off a little bit before I had him remove the duct tape.
So through all of these like trials and tribulations, like and physical pain, what is the thing that's keeping you going and pushing you? Because like, obviously for like 99.99% of people, like they're never going to be able to do something as physically and mentally taxing as that. So what sort of is the center of your drive?
I mean, like, don't like to quit. I don't like to lose. Right. So, I mean, that's a pretty big driver. It's what helps to be an entrepreneur too. Like if you like losing, you're not going to last very long as an entrepreneur. So you better like the taste of victory and be, ready and willing to win, like regardless of the pain. And, I had a hard time staying healthy, but I don't think anybody thought I wasn't tough. Right. And so like, I wasn't Bernie tough, but like I'm a tough guy. And so like a part of it's just like, dude, this sucks. I'm going to clench my jaw and I'm going to go through it. And I think the Marine Corps is really good about that. Instilling this mentality within Marines of like, hey, we might be doing this 30-mile forced march. And if you think about it as 30 miles, it's going to be really hard to make it. If you think about it as, hey, I've got to make 31-mile marches, that's a little bit easier. But at the end of the day, on mile 29, can I make one more step? And you can always make one more step. So make one step and then think about the next one. And like, that's really what it comes down to. Every step's painful, but every step's possible.
That's a great mindset. Oh, sorry, Matt Perkins. I'm jumping in because the saws are down for now.
Go for it, buddy.
So Jake, how many tours did you go on?
So I only did 2. I did one in Iraq in 2007 during what was called the Surge in an area called Anbar Province outside of Fallujah, also known as the Triangle of Death. So it was a lovely spot. And then after sniper school, I was sent in a 6-man team to an area of Afghanistan called the Helmand Valley, which was to contextualize that, Afghanistan is often reported as supplying about 90% of the world's opium, and about 75% of Afghanistan's opium comes from the Helmand Valley. So most people don't understand that like the Taliban is also like a narco, like drug trafficking empire. And so you can imagine like we were operating in some like a very interesting environment.
I've seen some of your videos. So yeah, they're pretty wild. But I think something that's really special is when you came back, you started Team Rubicon, which has really elevated a lot of people. What was the thought behind that?
I mean, to be honest, there was no thought behind it, right? So I got out of the Marine Corps in late 2009, and the plan was I was going to go back to business school. I was going to get my MBA, I had my sights set on Stanford, right? I didn't go the first time. I was like, I want to get in and go get my MBA from Stanford. So I applied to Stanford. I got rejected in early January. And that really pissed me off. And like a couple days after I got my rejection letter from Stanford, it's funny, they didn't put a football stamp on it the second time. I got my rejection letter and the Haiti earthquake happened. So I'm like not working because I'm waiting to, get these decisions and figure out where I'm going to be. And I, watch the earthquake unfold and I just get this urge to go help. And so I, put out a call for people that I'd served with, and we ended up getting this team together. Like, other people like Jeff Lang, who we played with for a few years at Wisconsin, was a firefighter in Milwaukee. He raised his hand, and then I posted on Facebook, my PayPal account, my personal PayPal. I was like, hey, like, I'm trying to raise some money to get this team down there. And guys like Jimmy Leonard, right, who was playing in the NFL at the time, was one in Owen Daniels, like these guys like put in like $1,000, couple $1,000 to like jumpstart it. Like that Badger network was still really, really strong. And it was remarkable. So like we get down to Haiti, we've got 8 guys. We're like, hey, let's give this team a name. We call it Team Rubicon. We're taking ourselves probably too seriously. Get down there. It's the worst. It's like the worst catastrophe I've ever seen in my life. 100,000 people were killed instantly in that. Another 150,000 people died later. Like, we would literally be moving through the streets. We'd see people that were bound and executed on the streets and like in gang retribution killings. Like, it was wild. And we were down there for 2 or 3 weeks and like helping people that were victims of the earthquake. And then it just never stopped. And 15 years later, the organization's got 160,000 volunteers. It's responded to 1,200 or 1,300 disasters and crises around the globe. And it was the ride of a lifetime, I'll tell you that, but totally unplanned and totally unexpected.
What was the moment in Team Rubicon where you realized this was more than just like a 2 or 3 week tour in Haiti, if you would? Like, when did you realize this was going to be like the next part of your life?
It's hard to say. Like, we came back from Haiti thinking like, hey, we'll kind of continue to do this like as a hobby. So it was kind of like we came back. I was going to start grad school in the fall, so I had a couple months. So I spent the summer like, people were applying to join the team, and I'd like, get resumes. Be like, all right, like you're in, you're out, you're in. And it was kind of like an old boys club. It's like, our disaster response team, our drinking team has a disaster response problem. Like whatever those softball league T-shirts say.
I like that.
And but it was going to be like nobody was ever going to do it full time. When bad things happened, we'd put up the bat signal and people would go and take a week or two to go save the world. And but then it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and so finally it was like, all right, like, are we going to commit to this? There's something here. And so it's hard to like really pin a single moment. Like, there were of course moments. Some of them were tragic, but like, we got to a point where it was like, all right, I dropped out of grad school to do it. And at that time, like, all right, it's on.
So Jake, when you're showing up to these places, these disaster sites, like Haiti the first time, where are you staying? Like, are you guys have resources? Like, are you just boots on the ground saying, we're just going to eat whatever we can find? Like, are you're basically immersed in the environment? What is that like?
I mean, Haiti, we made a drug deal with a local missionary where they had a walled compound near the airport, and it had a freshwater well in it. So there were a bunch of like Jesuit missionaries that were there. And so we basically made this deal with them where we could stay within their compound in tents, have access to some fresh water, and we would provide like security assessments for them, and like, not like armed security. We weren't armed, but like, push came to shove, like they probably wanted us inside that compound. And so, that's how Haiti played out. But I mean, it's, we respond to hundreds of communities across the United States every year. And, most of the times we're deploying these teams, they're staying in high school gymnasiums on cots, or they're staying in churches, sleeping on the pews. And it's really amazing to see how these communities in the United States will come together after a flood or hurricane or fire, and really welcome Team Rubicon in. And that's what our team is looking for, that, man. They're looking for like a little bit of hardship. Most of them serve in the military. This idea of like going on a mission is like a powerful opportunity for them to reconnect with that sense of purpose that they had. And they don't want to be staying at the Hilton. Like they don't like, it's not like, hey, well, I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, I'm here to save the world. It's like, no, hey, I packed my ruck, I've got my sleeping bag, all I need is a cot. If you don't have a cot, I'll sleep on the ground. And that's like part of the experience. It's pretty remarkable.
So 3 years ago, you launched Groundswell, and what was the impetus to start and take on a new venture, right? Because Team Rubicon's going great. You probably easily could have stayed there, been the CEO and run things and had a very comfortable life. What made you want to sort of go into something that's related, right, when it comes to being like philanthropy, volunteer driven, but it's very different than what you were doing with Team Rubicon. So like, what pushed you to do that?
Yeah, I've never been very comfortable being comfortable. So it was like literally a moment 10 years into Team Rubicon where I'm like, this is kind of easy now, right? Like I had this amazing executive team. My job, like I would make like 6 consequential decisions a year, which is what a CEO should be doing at a mature, enterprise level organization. But it's not really what I wasn't enjoying it as much. And then, there's all sorts of other factors that went into it. And I had also met a lot of nonprofit founders that had been running their nonprofit for 30 or 40 years. And I always looked at them like, I don't think that's good. Like organizations need to evolve. Like you need fresh ideas. And I always looked at these guys. I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. And so, I had a great number 2. I thought it was time. I promoted him. I stepped aside. I'm still super involved as chairman of the board, and that's I work 7-8 hours a week as chairman of the board. It's not a lightweight job, but wanted to be an entrepreneur again. So I wanted to do it on the for-profit side, but I still wanted to have impact in some way that had kind of become a part of who I was. And so I had observed a lot of things when I was running Team Rubicon, and some of that was the inefficiency in corporate philanthropy. And I had some ideas for how I thought it could be better. Started talking to some folks, and then I started talking to some venture capitalists, and you could start to see the wheels turning, and you get enough positive reactions to what's a kind of a napkin business plan. You start to say, okay, there's something here. And so I put a small team together. We went out and we pitched VCs in Silicon Valley, and we were fortunate. We raised a big chunk of money in 2021. Google Ventures led the round, and it was awesome because I think most people think of Google and they think of Google, right? Like it's like a behemoth that just prints money. And a lot of people are like, why would Google invest in like a social impact technology company? It's like they think it's $1 billion company, right? Like they're in it to make money. They didn't like write us a check for charity. They wrote us a check because they expect us to give us 1,000 times that money back. So the pressure's on. But they've been an amazing partner. We've got other amazing investors. Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
So I know we only have you for a couple more minutes, and also it's daycare pickup for my little teeny coach Huber. She runs my show.
Little Bernie.
Dude, so I would love to hear what you think, but I've obviously followed your career. I think it's astonishing. One of the coolest things, and maybe to you it's super meaningful, I thought it was very cool, is you won the ESPN Pat Tillman Award. Was that because he was in the military too? Is that something that is like extremely heartfelt for you? Were you like, did that come out of left field? Because that to me I was like, man, this dude wrote me an email in 2000. It's like, to me, it was like I don't know. I was just so thrilled for you. And I just thought it was so cool. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, let's make it clear. Like, I always aspired to win a different kind of ESPY. But listen, it was, we didn't talk about it, but like, Pat Tillman's death in 2004 happened right after spring ball my junior year. So like right after I had that conversation with Coach Huber about like, hey, I can't rely on you. I was back home 2 days before my sister's wedding in Iowa, and like the news broke about Pat Tillman's death. And so I was already thinking about like, what's next? Like I was at that moment, and that was like a profound moment for me, and probably the one that pushed me over the edge on the decision to join. So yeah, when the Tillman Foundation called and said, hey, we'd like you to be the honoree for this year's Tillman Award. Would you be interested in accepting? I'm like, do you really have to ask that question? Like, of course. And so, yeah, it was pretty amazing. Like, it was, I don't know, 14 years after his death and 14 years after like I'd made that decision to join the military. And so like, yeah, pretty full circle and powerful moment for me. And, obviously reflective of so many people in my life and we spent a lot of time talking about me today, but like, my wife, my co-founders, my, everybody that's been on the team, like it's been a remarkable journey with a lot of luck and a lot of people that have like picked me up and dusted me off, both literally after those dislocated shoulders, but, figuratively as well. So been interesting for sure.
Well, we cannot thank you enough for joining us here today. Make sure to check out more about Team Rubicon, teamrubiconusa.org and groundswell.io when it comes to Groundswell and all the great work that he is doing there. It's been an honor. Bernie knows that since Bernie and I met, 3 years ago, we started talking about who do we want to get on the podcast. You were one of the first names to ever come out of my mouth. So it's really...
Why did it take 3 years?
because I don't know how to get in touch with people. So that's what I rely on this guy for. So yeah, like I said, it's an honor. Thank you everyone for tuning in here to Believe in Badgers on the Believe Network, presented by betonline.ag and Oakbridge Wealth Management. We'll be back again sometime soon with another interview. But we appreciate Jake's time, and until next time, on Wisconsin.
Jake Wood for president.
There we go.
Dude, when are you running?